And we love to serve this over, this dish, smothered pork chops over buttered noodles. It's also wonderful over rice or mashed potatoes. So I'm just going to drop some egg noodles. And that's another one of my secrets. I try and keep things like bags of egg noodles and boxes of rice right in my pantry, so that if I don't have time to make mashed potatoes, not a big deal. I've got, you know, real easy. You can drop some noodles into some water and just round out the meal. So that's step number one, drop those egg noodles. All right, step number two is I've got a nice big skillet, and that's another one of my secrets as far as getting dinner done in a hurry. You've got bigger space to work with, and so things are going to cook a lot quicker. So I'm going to do a little olive oil into my big skillet, and then I picked up some pork chops, some really nice pork chops at Festival Foods. These happen to be the boneless pork chops, and a key to keeping pork chops nice and juicy and not dry is I like to get the pork chops that are a little bit thicker, not too thick, but just a little bit thicker. Now, if what's on sale are the thin pork chops, they're going to work fine too. I also don't want to overcook my pork, and then one of my secrets to doing nice tender pork chops is having some sort of a nice gravy or sauce to go with them, because pork tends to be dry anyway. So I think you know, a sauce just really complements pork. So we're going to do this smothered mushroom sauce, which is fantastic. So my pork chops, I want to season them on both sides with some salt and pepper. And that's real important, to season on both sides. And I want to get them into a nice hot skillet so that they'll get a little bit browned and leave some nice brown bits in the bottom of the pan. Now notice I'm using a stainless skillet, not a non-stick skillet. One of the reasons I'm doing that is because with a stainless, you're going to get some of those great brown bits that sometimes you just don't get when you're using those non-stick pans. I do love non-stick pans for things like making omelets, making mac and cheese, things that are going to be sticky. But when it comes to browning meats and getting a nice crust and creating great brown bits that's going to flavor up my sauce, there's nothing like a nice big stainless skillet. So people ask me all the time, pans, when it comes to pans, you know, what kind of pans do you use? Well, I have two sets. I have a set of non-stick pans, and then I have a set of stainless pans. And even if you don't have a whole set of stainless pans, as long as you have a nice big stainless skillet like this, preferably one that's also oven-proof, you're good to go. So it's a great investment. Just checking on my pasta. And then I also want to season my pasta while it's boiling. It really is the only chance to get some great flavor in there while you're, you know, cooking the pasta. Now I'm using some fresh thyme in this recipe. That's one of those herbs that I think is so much better fresh, but dried will work fine too. But you know, some herbs like oregano is one of those that dried oregano I think, you know, is fantastic. If you're not gonna, you know, if you don't want to splurge, it's one of those you don't need to. But boy, fresh rosemary and fresh thyme, all the difference in the world. So I'm just going to do a little bit of fresh thyme, which is going to go in this sauce and make it fantastic. Smells really, really good. Pork chops is one of those things that we eat so much chicken in our house, and I think everybody eats a lot of chicken. We love boneless, skinless chicken breasts. I always keep some in the freezer. But sometimes it's nice to switch things up, and every time I make pork chops, my family just goes crazy over them and says, oh my gosh, why don't we make these more often, Mom? Why don't you have them more often? They're so good. Just something that's a change of pace, and they go on sale a lot, so that's always a good time to do pork chops. Okay, got some time there. Just gonna give my pork chops, check them and see, ooh, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Got some nice color. Look at that. And you see we're creating some great brown bits in the bottom. It smells fantastic. How are you today, Anne?
Lovely.
Good. Good to hear. Now, while these are just hanging out doing their things, I'm going to talk about some of the other ingredients that we're using. I love the pre-washed, pre-sliced mushrooms. Those are wonderful. These smothered pork chops have mushrooms in them, and I think that's one of the reasons that my husband Bob loves them, because he's a mushroom guy. He loves mushrooms. And then we're going to do some onion and 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. So these are washed and pre-sliced for me. Saves me some time after a busy day when you just want to, don't feel like washing the mushrooms and slicing them up. Just want to get some nice color on these. So I'm just kind of browning them up all sides, and I'll put them back in here to finish the cooking. But the internal temperature for pork these days is 145 degrees. That's the magic number. Used to be that we would cook pork forever and a day. You don't have to do that anymore. The pork producers have come out with, they just lowered the number not too long ago. People used to cook pork, 160, 170, and people wondered why it was dry. Well, that's why. 145 is the magic number. So especially when you're grilling or roasting a pork roast, once that internal thermometer reaches 145, get that pork out of the pan, out of the roasting pan, off the grill, and remember, it's going to continue to cook. So these chops are going to continue to cook. I'm going to put them on a plate, and they'll continue to cook a little bit and keep warm while they're hanging out here. Okay, so now I'm going to add some butter to the skillet. And I've got about 1/2 cup of sliced or diced onion. And then my mushrooms. Ooh, how good does that smell? In go my mushrooms. I just want to cook those for a minute, season those with some salt and pepper. I'm going to go ahead and give my egg noodles a drain because I can already tell they're done and I don't want to overcook them. These noodles cook up so quickly. Okay, got a nice big platter over here that I'm just going to lay these noodles onto, like a nice little bed, so that my pork chops can go right on top of that when they're done. All right, let's get back to our mushrooms and our onions. Starting to get some nice color. So we're going to go ahead and finish making the sauce. Nothing like the smell of mushrooms and onions sauteing. I'll never forget when my daughter Ireland was a little girl and I was sauteing mushrooms. And at that point the kids didn't like mushrooms. And she came down from upstairs and she said, "Mom, what in the world smells so good?" And I said, "Well, I'm sauteing mushrooms." She said, "Well, I got to try them." She was like 2 or 3. She ate the entire pan full. Yeah, and it's just because it smelled so good. All right. Little chicken stock to deglaze the pan is the fancy word my chef friends use. And basically what that does is it gets all the brown bits from the pork off the bottom of that pan and gives it great flavor. A little bit of soy sauce, believe it or not, just to richen the flavor. You could use low sodium. In goes 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. People give me a hard time about it. I'm cool with it. I love my cream soups because they just make quick cooking easy, and they take so many recipes to a whole nother level. And because we've got all this great flavor in here, it doesn't taste like a canned soup. But this is something my grandmother used to do, a really quick, simple pork chop recipe with cream of mushroom soup, and it was always one of my favorites growing up as a kid, and so I kind of took it to a next level. And again, there's low sodium versions of canned soup too, so. I know, Anne's over there going yum, and I totally agree. I'm just using a whisk to get all the lumps out, and we're just about done. And see this great gravy that this makes. Okay, a couple of other ingredients. Sour cream. Again, you could certainly use light. All of my recipes you can lighten up. When a recipe calls for butter, you can substitute olive oil. You can use light sour cream. Light cream cheese. So if you need to lighten things up, go for it. And the sour cream just goes in at the last minute just to make it rich and creamy and wonderful. And then some of this thyme just to finish it off. Really make this dish even more amazing. Okay. Now if the chops aren't done, what you can do is finish them, stick them back in at this point. I like to just line them up. On my platter with my egg noodles. And then take some of that gravy. And the mushrooms and the onions. You could smell this at home. It's a wow factor. And it creates lots of gravy too. And then maybe you can garnish with a little bit of fresh thyme on top too. So there you go, smothered pork chops. I think this is a winner and the family will love this. Recipe is in my latest cookbook. You can also get the recipe online, Fox 11 online. Click on the Living tab and recipes and it'll be right there.